The fleet hung over the darkened limb of Earth like a verdict waiting to fall. Admiral Vorkal tasted triumph before the First Order left his tongue. Humanity, to him, was a relic processing species, low, obedient, shaped for extraction. Their archives showed nothing beyond obsolete coil guns and atmospheric drones, the toys of a world that had never expanded past its moon. The Empire's 164 victories played through his mind like carved seals, each a reminder that intimidation, properly applied, avoided wasteful conflict. He studied the Holopine as the 1,280-ship Armada drifted into the intimidation lattice. Columns of cruisers aligned at 900-kilometer spacing, shimmering with the soft blue of primed plasma veins. The display pleased. You mean the humans would be watching, and spectacle mattered. Empires ruled first through AW and only second through annihilation. Projection. He asked. Vice Admiral Saraxis bowed her crested helm. Expected human resistance, negligible. Estimated casualties on their side, 41 to 63 million if they force us to fire deeper strikes. Civil infrastructure collapse within 7 minutes. Surrender. Probability after first volley, 98%. Vorkal exhaled in satisfaction. They will surrender before the second minute. They always do. A younger commander chuckled. If they do not, Admiral, we simply process the relic world. Cleanly as protocol demands, Vorkal approved of the phrasing, relic processors. The term had spread through the fleet after their last campaign. Primitive species, whose worth lay in tidying the ruins left behind by greater civilizations. Humanity fit perfectly. Isolated, silent, technologically stale. He imagined them now, scrambling to decode the Armada's intrusion. Hands shaking over consoles that could not comprehend Imperial bandwidth. One precise lesson, Saraxis added, and their refusal will end. She highlighted the intimidation pattern. 3 feigned bombardment spirals, 1 real. Spiral radius 14,000 kilometers. Duration 22 seconds. Enough to scorch upper orbitals and fracture morale. A punchline dropped through the comms, crisp and amused. They won't survive 1 pattern. The bridge laughed soft, confident, practiced. Vor, Cal allowed it. Dominance must breathe before it strikes. He turned to the tactical chronometer and watched the countdown slip past T300 seconds. Perfect symmetry, perfect doctrine. Another victory already settling into shape. Open the forward observation array, he commanded. I want Earth magnified. The planet swelled before him. Blue, serene, unaware. No defensive lattice shimmered. No energy curtains rose to meet them. Not even a warning ping. A species truly sleeping beneath the shadow of empire. Admiral Saraxis said, once we demonstrate force. Protocol allows a final offer. For a record, of course, he replied. We show power, then we show mercy. The order matters. Leaned closer to the display. Imagining the panic, their arrival must be causing Bella cities staring upward. Militaries scrambling, leaders whispering doomed negotiations. It was the same every time. Their 164 victories had taught them the rhythm of terror. Another stinger rippled through the air, spoken lightly. Relics, break fast. Vorkal smiled. Begin the intimidation spread. Let humanity see what ascendant dominion looks like. No urgency touched his voice. No doubt clouded his certainty. The Armada shifted with cathedral grace. Engines humming in perfect sequence as the first spile prepared to descend. This conquest, he believed, would end as all the others had quickly, cleanly, inevitably, while the void waited to carry word of their next triumph. The ultimatum arrived as a compressed tritone packet. Imperial script unfolding across the secure chambers display. Director Hole read it once, without blinking, then set it aside as if it were weather data. Same vocabulary as their last broadcasts, he murmured. Subjugation framed as stewardship. Casualty projections disguised as mercy. Across the table, Envoy Idris folded her hands. The ceiling lights dimmed by 3 degrees as the system routed all processing toward the encrypted reply channel. Behind the walls, unseen, the first threads of protocol blackfold stirred cold, silent, authorization gates sliding open one by one. They call us relic processors again, Idris noted, as if the insult makes the demand gentler. Haley allowed himself a small breath. Composure is our advantage. They expect fear. They will not receive it. The Armada's message pulsed again. Surrender within 300 seconds. Accept protective integration, or face orbital cleansing. Standard intimidation doctrine for an empire with 164 victories behind it. All predictable. All irrelevant. IDRIS drafted the reply with deliberate clarity. No tremor, no concessions. Earth does not accept imperial authority. We decline compliance. Any act of aggression will be met under our sovereign defense charter. She paused, then added, we do not target civilians. We do not execute prisoners. Our record is public. Send it, Halley said. The transmission leapt toward orbit. In 0.002 seconds, vanishing into the ink-black sky. Neither flinched. They had trained for this moment without ever admitting publicly that such training existed. Beneath the chamber, far deeper than any civilian network reached, the dormant infrastructure responded. Blackfold Node 1 unlocked, then Node 2, cascading. Down the chain, pressure sensors registered micro-vibrations as 19 pylons across the planet shifted phase alignment by 0.0004 degrees. Nothing visible, nothing loud, but the geometry of space around Earth began to deform in ways no foreign sensor would recognize until too late. IDRIS watched the floor's faint shimmer as the system rerouted atmospheric static. Once activation passes Node 7, she said. Quietly, there is no abort. We will not need one, Halley replied. Blackfold is not aggression. It is boundary. Still, neither pretended the stakes were small. The enemy fleet numbered 1,280 ships, a formation designed to erase worlds within minutes. Earth, by comparison, appeared unarmed. That illusion mattered. It invited overconfidence, the Empire's most reliable flaw. The chamber lights flickered. Again, Node 7 confirmed. A soft stinger line formed in Idris's mind. Unbidden Garm is not weakness. She didn't speak it aloud, but the room seemed to hold the sentiment anyway. Halley studied the projected positions of the approaching fleet. Their intimidation spiral widened to 14,000 kilometers, precisely as predicted. They believe they are teaching us fear, he said. But fear is not a language we negotiate in. The final diplomatic reply from orbit arrived. A terse dismissal, a declaration that Earth's refusal would be corrected through force. Idris deleted it before it could finish rendering. Blackfold's last gate opened. The system settled into readiness, no glow, no harm, only a subtle stillness, like air before a pressure break. And we proceed, Halley said. Outside, the sky held steady and blue, giving no hint of the precision waiting beneath its surface, or of the decision Earth had already made, to stand without shaking, and to end this conflict with control measured in microseconds. The opening salvo fell toward Earth like a descending wall of light. Admiral Vorkal expected the familiar bloom of atmospheric ignition, the spectacle that broke lesser civilizations before the real bombardment began. Instead, the energy vanished, not scattered, not deflected. The sensors registered 0.4 seconds of contact before cross-mapping returned impossible values. Thermal yield absorbed at 99.97% efficiency, beam coherence folded into non-radiative channels. Impact signatures reduced to statistical noise. Vorkal blinked once. Recalculate, the gunnery officer tried. Data flickered, stuttered, recalibrated, then collapsed again into null. Admiral, a target did not respond. Our volleys simply terminated. A silence spread across the command deck, thin and sharp as a blade. Below them, Earth remained serenely blue. Another volley launched automatically, 3 staggered arcs, each calibrated at 1.2 terajoules per second. They should have lit half the hemisphere in a column of fire. Again, nothing. The beams met the planet's upper margins and dissolved. Light folding into tight spirals no sensor could track. A harmonic inversion was occurring, one the Empire had no doctrine for. Even the aftershock graphs were flat, impossibly, offensively flat. A stinger line pulsed through the comms. Not spoken by confidence now, but by disbelief. Where did the fire go? Vice Admiral Saraxis gripped her console. We show 0 reflectivity, 0 scattering, 0 atmospheric excitation. Admiral, Earth is absorbing us. Vorkal's jaw locked. No planet-based civilization has this capability. The numbers disagree, she replied. On the far hull, band distress data from the outermost cruisers began streaming in micro-distortions around their hulls, as if space itself were folding. Navigation flagged 19 anomalous field spikes, evenly distributed and synchronized to within 0.0001 seconds. The pattern was intentional. Identify the source, Vorkal barked. We cannot, the technicians answered. The distortions originate everywhere and nowhere. It's a grid, but it's not emitting. It's silent. The word hung heavy. Then the real panic began. The third volley, a saturation strike, should have overwhelmed any planetary shield. Instead, each of the 1,280 ships recorded instantaneous dissipation. Drain rates accelerating on a curve their predictive models refused to extrapolate. Beam integrity fell by 47% before leaving the cannons. Matter rounds lost kinetic signature. Mid-light plasma packets unraveled into harmless ions. Admiral, we are firing into a phase-shifted medium, Syraxis said. Space around Earth is being rewritten. Vorkal refused to accept it. They are relic processors. They do not rewrite anything. But the numbers continued carving new truths. Impact, region, 0. Thermal change, 0. Counterfire, 0. It was domination expressed through absence. Power that hid itself not out of weakness, but out of disdain. A junior officer's voice cracked. We've registered 5 distress pings from the Vanguard ships. They're reporting visual distortions before losing telemetry. Visual distortions? Of what? Of nothing, Admiral. They're seeing nothing. Another stinger dropped, cold as vacuum. We missed something fundamental. Vorkal stared at the untroubled world below, the blue surface reflecting starlight as if unaware of the war touching its sky. But Earth was not unaware. It was waiting. And somewhere inside that silence, a system older than their doctrines had already made its first move. Earth moved first, not with sound, not with light, but with a shift so precise the Imperial fleet mistook it for sensor drift. Acceleration vectors blossomed across the tactical grid, thin, clean lines rising from the planet's surface like needles of intent. They did not correspond to rockets, shuttles, or atmospheric craft. They were geometric. Declarations. Director Holly watched from the control chamber as Blackfold Node 11 aligned. Begin vector cascade, he said. The ground did not shake, air did not tremble. But space, quietly, obeyed. Above. The Empire's formation warped. The nearest cruisers registered the change first, micro-lensing distortions pulling at their hull plating, as if invisible tides were tightening around them. Navigation alarms flared with warnings of emergent null zones, localized pockets of space thinning by 0.8% in the span of 1.3 seconds. Admiral, formations are drifting, Syraxis snapped. Separation gaps widening by 300 meters and rising. Vorkal stared at the data in disbelief. Correct? Manually? We can't. Null zones are destabilizing vector locks. The acceleration traces from Earth climbed past. 12,000 meters per second squared with no observable thrust source. The Empire's fleet AI attempted to compensate with burns, but null zone harmonics swept through their formation like a silent tide, unweaving flight paths before they fully formed. The first distress ping hit the command deck, clipped ping 1, spatial shear warnings, hull microstrain at 0.004%. Navigational blindness for 0.7 seconds. VOR. Cal forced comb, minor anomalies, rebalance, but the second ping cut him off. Ping 2, inertial inversion, gravity well shifting. Vector orientation by 2.1 degrees. The ship's commander screamed for manual overrides before the signal dissolved into static. Syraxis paled. Admiral, the distortion fields are tracking us. They're adaptive. Earth's velocity lances rose higher, curling into arcs that didn't obey Imperial mathematics. These were not weapons in the conventional sense. They were sculpted domains-precise manipulations of the medium their ships traveled through. A third distress ping hit tragged, nearly incoherent. Ping 3, corridor collapse. 2 escort vessels, losing spatial reference entirely. The holomap blossomed with red fracture lines where formation integrity had slipped beyond recoverable thresholds. A stinger whispered through the thinning silence. Formation is no longer yours. Vorkal slammed his fist against the console. Identify the generators. We see nothing, Admiral. The technician stammered. No satellites, no emissions, just vectors. Intent, without origin. Ping 4 arrived, faint as a dying heartbeat. Ping 4, hull compression ripples, space tightening. crew disoriented. Then, ping 5 shorter still. Ping 5 shorter still. We are not alone in here, the signal snapped. Syraxis stared at the blank display. Admiral, whatever Earth is using, it's folding us into pockets we cannot model. Vorkul's voice dropped too. Steal. Find the boundary. Find anything. But the boundaries no longer corresponded to Imperial space. Null zones multiplied in synchronized pulses, 19 spikes, perfectly timed, tightening around the fleet like a closing hand. Below, Earth remained still, serene, offering no threat and no reassurance. In the control chamber, Hale watched the vector fields settle into their final alignment. They are losing cohesion, Idris observed quietly. Not by our force, Hale replied. By their assumptions. Space flexed once more, gentle as a breath before a storm. The fleet felt it, and nothing they had ever conquered had prepared them for this. The moment of rupture arrived, without light. Director Hale verified the final alignment, 19 pylons. Harmonic variance stable within 0.00003%. The silent grid no longer waited. It poised, balanced on a boundary only humanity understood. Blackfold, execute, he said. The command propagated through subspace in 0.0008 seconds, and space itself shifted. Above Earth, the Imperial Armada 1280 vessels strong, arranged in cathedral symmetry, froze, not physically, but in their trajectories, thrust vectors, and structural signatures all halted mid-update, as if the universe had decided to hold its breath. Admiral Vorkul felt the wrongness instantly. Why have we stopped firing? We haven't, Admiral, Syraxis whispered. Something else has stopped the meaning of firing. On every ship, cannon telemetry dissolved into blank fields. Plasma reservoirs lost phase stability. Railgun slugs evaporated from magnetic confinement as though decomposed into probabilities. Even inertia failed to behave properly. Then the collapse began. Each of the 19 pylon harmonics extended outward, weaving silent, overlapping interference planes. Not beams, there was nothing so crude, but sculpted zones where the definition of matter thinned. Ship by ship, the fleet began to vanish. VOR, Cal watched the outer wings first. A cruiser simply shortened. Its aft vanished as if erased from a diagram, then its bow folded inward along a dimension the Empire had no name for. The ship didn't explode. It was omitted, its mass redistributed into the grid's waiting architecture. Track the debris. Vorkul barked, but the order died as the sensor logs returned 0, not 0 detected, 0 produced. A stinger line cut through the bridge, erasure rate accelerating. By the time Vorkul processed the words, the second ring of ships had gone. 0.4 seconds had passed since execution, Admiral. We're reading Maslow's curves beyond theoretical limits, a technician choked out. Something is taking the fleet apart faster than quantum residue can form. Syraxis stared at her console as another set of icons blinked out. Where is the energy going? Hale, far below on Earth, answered without knowing the question. Grid load at 11%, Idris reported, voice steady. No strain, no breach. Then continue, Hale replied softly. Vorkul clung to the last scraps of certainty. This is impossible. No world holds this capability. They are relic processors. But relic processors did not rewrite spacetime. The command ships began to deform. Their hulls folded along invisible axes, disappearing from stern to prow in neat, mathematical progression. Syraxis's hands trembled as she counted the remaining vessels. 112 left. 70-49, her voice fractured. No escape trajectory exists. Null zones are everywhere. Vorkul's display flashed red as his own flagship trembled. The view screen warped inward, starfield bending into a narrow cone. Signal, the fleet, all ships, fire, blind fire, anything, he shouted. Nothing launched. Their weapons no longer existed to obey him. His bridge crew watched in silent horror as the grid's final sweep approached an elegant curvature of absence expanding. Toward them, another stinger struck, cold and absolute. There will be no wreckage. The flagship's bow dissolved. Then the air. VOR, Cal tried to breathe, but there was no space left to hold breath. His last sensation was not pain, but a sudden, overwhelming understanding that humanity had never been primitive. They had been quiet. And in 0.4 seconds, the Imperial Armada became a memory without remains. On Earth, the grid folded its harmonics back into stillness. Energy usage leveled at exactly 11%, ready again if needed, though Hole hoped it never would. Above, the sky returned to calm blue, as if no fleet had ever threatened it and no victory had ever been required. The sky over Earth was quiet again, but the quiet carried weight. Director Harley stood in the observation hall, watching the upper atmosphere ripple faintly as the silent grid settled into passive equilibrium. The system had used 11% of its reserves, no more than a cautious breath yet. The consequences already echoed far beyond orbit. They will ask what we did, Envoy Idris said beside him. What we became to do it. Holly shook his head. We did not become anything. We held a boundary. That matters. She considered this, fingers resting lightly on the glass. Our choice was lethal, even if necessary. An entire Armada gone in 0.4 seconds, and without fragments. Some will call that excess. Excess is cruelty for its own sake, Holly replied. What we executed was containment. Their doctrine was annihilation. Ours cannot be. The distinction mattered to him, though he knew it would sound thin to those who counted lives in abstractions. The empire that had fallen boasted 164 victories, each earned through intimidation, forced compliance, and bombardments carved into memory. They had not expected mercy. They had expected obedience, or Earth owed them neither. Across the hall, analysts murmured around the coalition feed array. 3 neighboring star nations had already scrambled long-range observation buoys when the battle began, hoping to witness a swift imperial victory. Instead, they recorded something that unsettled even their hardened strategists. A fleet of 1,280 ships collapsing without detonation, recoil, or radiative trace. Idris read the incoming summaries. Coalition observers are divided, she said. Some claim our defense constitutes a supernipon. Others think it violates physical law. None understand how we avoided collateral damage. Good, Halle answered. Let them misunderstand. Fear is not the point. Restraint is. A soft stinger line formed between them, unspoken but present. Power means choosing limits. Below, coastal winds rolled across the evening ocean, ordinary and unhurried. That normalcy grounded Holle more than any briefing. We cannot mimic, the Empire, Idris said. We cannot replace their tyranny with our shadow. That is the burden, Halle replied. To wield decisive force without becoming the thing that made it necessary. The coalition feeds, updated again. One nation proposed emergency sanctions. Another demanded full disclosure of Earth's technology. The third quietly pulled its border fleets back by 3 minutes, reconsidering every doctrine it had ever trusted. They're afraid, Idris murmured. They should be cautious, Halle corrected. But they should also see the pattern. We did not strike first. We will not strike those who stand down. If they seek dialogue, we answer. If they seek subjugation, we refuse. A long pause drifted between them. What if they conclude domination is the only stable path? Idris asked. Hale's gaze lifted to the stars. Then we remind them that stability built on coercion is not stability at all. Far above, the silent grid glimmered once as it discharged residual phase. Coronan, invisible exhale. Idris folded. Heron's a galaxy, just watch the old rules die. Then let new ones stand, Halle said. Defined not by conquest, but by boundaries. Not by fear, but by choice. He turned away from the observation window, the world settling into its familiar rhythm behind him. Humanity had revealed its strength. Now it had to prove it deserved to keep it. The press chamber was sealed, insulated from every civilian network. Only 12 officials were cleared to hear what Director Holle was about to say. Even then, the disclosure would be partialed just enough to shift the galaxy's interpretation without exposing what lay beneath. Envoy Idris stood at his side as the projection table activated. 19 faint points appeared in orbit around Earth, each marked with a neutral identifier. These, Haley began, are the pylon nodes of the silent grid. Their harmonics are synchronized to within 0.00003% variance. They form a non-emissive defense lattice capable of phase manipulation, acceleration control, and spatial nullification. He spoke plainly, offering no embellishment, no triumph. Power did not need spectacle. One official swallowed. You, confirming that only 19 structures repelled an armada of 1,280 ships. Repelled is inaccurate, Halle corrected gently. They prevented harm. The outcome was a function of interaction, not aggression. Idris tapped the display, expanding one pylon's internal diagram. The room startled not at what they saw, but at what was conspicuously absent. No reactor banks, no propulsion rings, no control consoles, only layered geometry, crystalline plates locked in angles that defied intuitive engineering. They're silent because they don't generate emissions, Idris said. They redirect field states using harmonics. Think of them as tuning forks, responding to localized shifts rather than broadcasting force. Who built them? An admiral asked. Hale did not answer immediately. We adapted them, he finally said. We did not originate their core architecture. A low, uneasy murmur swept across the room. The implication did not need elaboration. These pylons were recovered. Someone pressed. Recovered is one word for it, Idris replied. Inherited. Might be closer. A stinger line dropped into the quiet like a weight. Some foundations predate us. The projection shifted to show the subterranean strata beneath each pylon deep. Ancient channels carved with precision matching the orbital structures. Composition scans placed them far below any known human construction period. Older than industrial history, perhaps older than human civilization entirely. We discovered these alignments decades ago, Holly said. We spent years attempting to decode them. We learnt enough to integrate modern control layers, but the foundation, the true geometry, was already here. Then Earth has alien infrastructure. Idris held the official's gaze. Earth has history, and not all of it starts with us. The room fell into a heavy stillness. This revelation would destabilize more than military doctrine. It would shake anthropology, physics, even identity, Hale continued, voice steady. We disclose this now because the galaxy witnessed something it cannot explain. If we hide everything, suspicion becomes certainty. But if we provide a frame 19 pylons, silent harmonics, partial inheritance, we offer transparency without vulnerability. An intelligence officer leaned forward. The coalition will demand origin data, and they will not receive it, Hale said. We cannot provide what we do not possess. The architecture beneath the pylons is inscrutable, it responds. But it does not speak, Idris added. Its behavior suggests intention, but we have never detected active guidance. It is dormant unless interfaced. Only Blackfold gives it direction. The projection dimmed, leaving only the faint outline of Earth suspended in the dark. One final point, Hale said. We revealed nothing today that threatens peace, but we revealed enough to end the illusion of our weakness. He powered down the display. Let them reconsider their doctrines, he said quietly. The Empire fell because it believed power was loud. Idris glanced toward the sky, where no pylon could be seen. And ours, she said, was silent. The room understood the message. The old assumptions had died. Something older had merely opened its eyes. The last Imperial command craft drifted in disarray. Held not by force but by geometry they could not escape. Their formation, once perfect, had collapsed into a scattered shell only 3,200 kilometers above Earth, close enough to see cloud formations. Far too close to maneuver. Envoy Idris monitored the situation from the tactical hall. Non-lethal vectors only, she reminded. We take survivors. We take testimony. Director Hawley nodded. The Empire's hierarchy still had fragments left, 9 command vessels, each carrying senior officers who had not yet comprehended their defeat. Blackfold's lethal functions were dormant now. Surgical control had replaced erasure. Begin anchor threading, Hale ordered. Above. The silent grid shifted with quiet certainty. 3 pylon harmonics, extended filament thin, conduits massless, invisible to Imperial sensors hooking into the weakened null zones around each command craft. Space tightened by 0.3%, enough to immobilize but not damage. Inside the Imperial flagship, Admiral Yevrin, the highest-ranking Savar, felt the deck tilt as motion die. Identify the source, she snapped. No impacts detected, her navigator stammered. We're held by nothing measurable. Yevrin's fists clenched. Then measure harder. But their instruments already showed the truth. Each craft was suspended in a pocket where inertia had been politely set aside. No binders, no beams, just a refusal, expressed through physics. The grid delivered the next step, boarding. Marines with rifles, not breaching torpedoes. Instead, 3 human vessels, sleek, unarmed, modified shuttles, rose from Earth along acceleration vectors tuned to match the null zones. They moved at 8,400 meters per second. then halted in perfect symmetry around the flagship. A stinger hung in the silence. Dominion ends with restraint. Who dares approach us, unarmed? Yevrin hissed. Her crew gave no answer. The question wasn't tactical, it was existential. Human delegates materialized on the flagship's bridge via phased docking corridors. No explosions, no casualties, just a sudden, quiet presence. Idris led them, her expression controlled, her stance non-threatening. "Admiral," she said, "your Armada has been neutralized. You and your surviving officers are under protective custody. No harm will come to you if you comply." Yevrin stared at her as though the words were blasphemy. "You destroyed us in 0.4 seconds. You shattered 1,280 ships. And now you pretend—" "Mercy, not pretend," Idris answered. "Demicus," Hale's voice carried through the comes from Eth. "Your doctrine is built on fear of retaliation. Ours is built on preventing cycles of destruction. Your prisoners will receive legal status, medical care, and representation." A junior officer whispered, trembling, "Why would you spare us?" Idris met his gaze. "Because strength without mercy becomes the thing it fights." One by one, the remaining Imperial craft were boarded. Each surrender registered as a node on the tactical grid. 9 vessels secured, 413 personnel stabilized, 0 fatalities during capture. The numbers created a new doctrine in real time, one the Empire had never taught. Yevrin finally lowered her command. "Crest, then, this defeat is complete," she said. "Our hierarchy collapses with us." "No," Idris replied. "Your hierarchy collapses because it could not imagine another way." As the captured vessels descended toward Earth under guided null zones, the survivors looked out at the world they had misjudged. Not a relic, not a processor, a civilization that fought with precision and ended with mercy. Dominion shattered not with fire, but with control, accepted by those who had run out of choices, and by those who refused to answer violence with more of it. The global broadcast began without fanfare, no anthem. No martial framing, only a steady tone and the seal of the Earth. Coalition. Every coalition observer across 5 sectors received the same transmission simultaneously. Translated into 214 dialects, Director Haley appeared first. Not triumphant, not defiant. "Simply present to the citizens of all observing nations," he said. "Earth confirms the secure capture of 9 Imperial command vessels and 413 surviving personnel. No prisoners have been harmed. All will receive medical treatment, representation, and trial under interstellar humanitarian law." The statement rolled outward in clean, even cadence. No threat, no apology, only clarity. Envoy Idris stepped into frame. "Our stance is consistent. We reject domination. We reject punitive slaughter. We reject the idea that strength requires cruelty." The silent grid neutralized the Armada to prevent planetary destruction, not to enact one. Across distant star systems, governments scrambled. 3 neighboring nations had already logged inquiry codes before the broadcast finished its first minute. Haley continued, "To ensure transparency, authorized representatives from neutral states may observe the trials. Records will be archived unredacted for public review." A stinger flashed between sentences, crisp and unavoidable. "Mercy is policy, on Imperial frequencies not yet fully shut down." Admiral Yevrin listened with a hollow ache in her chest. She had expected execution or indoctrination. Instead she heard law. Measured law, something her empire had forgotten centuries ago. In the coalition halls, analysts stared at the telemetry from the battle. 0 debris, 0 civilian casualties, 11% grid stress, 19 pylon harmonics, never exceeding safe thresholds. The numbers made the broadcast impossible to ignore. Power this precise should have been terrifying, but the mercy afterward made it something else entirely. Idris elaborated. "The Empire's survivors will not be coerced. They will not be denied communication with their family as one security. Protocols are complete. Earth does not break captives." A minister from the Hellion Compact demanded a private channel within seconds. Another from the Trinari fold declared Earth a strategic paradox, dangerous and yet stabilizing. A third bloc announced emergency talks, fearing that the fall of a 164 victory empire would destabilize every border treaty in their region. Haley addressed this directly. "We seek no expansion, no tribute, no reordering of territories. But we will defend ourselves and any worlds threatened by annihilation with proportional and bounded force." The word proportional carried more weight now than most weapons. Phaedrus added, the Empire chose coercion as doctrine. We choose accountability, for ourselves and for those we capture. Their officers will face fair judgment. Their soldiers will be treated as human beings, not instruments. In the Imperial detention ward, a young lieutenant whispered, almost to himself, this is not how conquerors behave. One of the guards, an armed, deliberate, commented, we are not conquerors. The political gravity shifted in real time. Treaties revised themselves. Fleet commanders paused deployment plans. Old fears recalculated. New possibilities formed like quiet constellations. Halle closed the broadcast with a simple line, strength is not the right to destroy. It is the responsibility to choose restraint. The signal faded. Across the galaxy, nations faced a truth they had never planned for. Humanity had revealed terrifying capability and answered it with mercy. The signal reached them long after the Armada had been erased. In the deep, uncharted dark far beyond the borders of any modern empire, an ancient coalition drifted in. Patient silence, not a governance, not a species, a continuity. A gathering of minds that had survived extinctions by refusing to interfere unless a threshold was crossed. Tonight it had been crossed. The first alert pulsed through their crystalline arrays, an encoded resonance pattern, unmistakable, even after millennia. Event, Blackfold detected, source, Sol system, duration, 0.4 seconds. Energy curvature, consistent with pre-collapse architecture. The oldest among them stirred, their thoughts shimmering through the communal lattice. Earth, one voice murmured, a young world wearing an old weapon. Another corrected gently, not weapon, framework. They opened the recorded stream. There was no debris, no shockwave, no signature lingering in vacuum. Just the instantaneous disappearance of 1,280 vessels, folded without rupture, distributed across harmonics that matched forbidden blueprints. The humans could not have built this, a third mind said. Their civilization is measured in thousands of years. Blackfold predates the tidal epoch, but they used it, another replied, tilting the data for emphasis. Used it with precision, with restraint, and at only 11% output. A tremor of concern rippled across the lattice. Restraint was rare in younger species. Understanding, rarer still. They examined deeper layers. 19 synchronized pylons. Their harmonic variants identical to a lattice design abandoned ages ago. The coalition had buried the knowledge, scattered the components, ensured no successor civilization would stumble upon the architecture whole. Yet, Earth had inherited fragments, subterranean alignments, orbital geometries, and adapted them, not fully, but enough. A shimmering stinger echoed through their shared space. The silence has been broken. One of the elder minds expanded a holograph of the Imperial invasion. The Empire's doctrine had been predictable, brutal, loud. Earth's response had been the opposite, brief, surgical, unanswerable, and afterward, mercy. Mercy complicates the projection, a senior analyst said. A species that kills without hesitation is dangerous. A species that chooses when not to kill is unpredictable. Unpredictable is worse, another agreed. A moment of long, contemplative quiet passed. Stars drifted across their observation field, each one a possible future. What do we do? Asked the youngest presence. We watch, replied the elder. We always watch. But will they search for the origin of the grid? The youth pressed. They will, came the answer. All species do. Once they taste the edges of power. Now they paused, studying Earth's final broadcast, its promise of trials, restraint, boundaries. They used Blackfold not as conquerors, but as defenders. That is, unexpected. Unexpected does not mean safe. The lattice dimmed, aligning toward a single conclusion. Begin horizon tracing, the elder commanded. Plot all vectors from Sol. Monitor every acceleration, every unanswered signal. If they awaken the deeper architecture, we must be present. The chamber lights pulsed once, marking agreement. Far across the galaxy. Unaware of the attention now fixed upon them, humanity tended to prisoners, repaired networks, and tried to understand what they had inherited. The coalition's final thought shimmered into the dark. Earth has opened a door. What waits beyond it will shape the next age.